Hey friend, welcome back to the Care Collective podcast, a space where caregivers can feel seen, supported, and a little less alone in everything they're carrying. Here we talk about the parts of caregiving that don't always get said aloud, the emotional weight, the identity shifts, the small moments that matter, and the ways we can actually feel more connected in the middle of it all. In today's episode, I will be talking about something that I think that a lot of caregivers experience but don't always know how to navigate. And it's that slow, painful feeling of losing connection with someone you love. Whether it's memory loss, dementia, or just the natural changes that come in aging, it can feel like the relationship you once had is slipping away. And you're left wondering, how do I still reach them? How do I show up? How do we stay connected when things don't always look the same anymore? In today's conversation, I'm joined by Tyler, the founder of Memory Board, a tool designed to help families stay connected with loved ones experiencing memory loss. And I will leave one quick note here that when we recorded this episode, this was before the product had even launched, but now you can check out their website if this sounds like something that would be useful for you. But what I love about this conversation isn't just the technology, but it's the heart behind it, because this didn't start as just a business idea. It started as a caregiver trying to stay connected to the person they were caring for, in this case his grandmother. And you realize just how hard that can become over time. We talk about what it actually feels like when communication starts to fade, why meeting people where they're at matters more than we think, how small moments of connection can still exist even when things change, and how caregivers can reduce that feeling of disconnection even from a distance. If you've ever felt like you're losing pieces of your relationship with someone you loved, this episode is going to really feel close to home. So take a deep breath and let's get started. Well, thanks for coming on today to why you've built your company. And because I know last time we talked, it sounded like there was a lot of personal meaning in it for you. So I'm excited to hear more about that. So can we kind of just start with introducing yourself, your company, what you're working on building, and we'll just kind of start there.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate the opportunity to
of course.
present Memory Board and kind of what we're building. My name's Tyler Zannini, started Memory Board about a year ago with my father-in-law, based on our own personal experiences supporting our parents and grandparents with memory loss, dementia, Alzheimer's. Memory Board is a digital display that sits in the home of your loved one. And through a mobile app, family members and caregivers can send reminders, messages, notifications, updates all throughout the day in real time. This idea of digitizing the sticky note or digitizing the whiteboard that, many of us as caregivers become accustomed to, and try to help take care of somebody with memory loss. But yeah, it really began because of a personal experience that I had trying to support the care of my grandmother. She's old and very fortunate that she's still with us. She's had vascular dementia now for over 5 years. I live in San Francisco. She lives in Orlando, Florida, where I grew up. And just as the years went by, it just became harder and harder to stay in touch with her, communicate with her, and just kind of feel connected to her. I think a lot of us kind of have that experience of, as our loved ones age, you just lose touch. Harder to communicate with. You just don't have the ability to kind of keep in touch like you did when they were a few years younger. So Memory Board is really a way to kind of bridge that gap. For me, and the way that I use it with my grandmother, it's really a communication tool. I have a young daughter at home, so I send a lot of updates about what's going on with her and her life every single day. And and she loves that. She gets to kind of see what's going on in our lives, even though we're thousands of miles away. But for a lot of folks, they're using it as a tool to help manage somebody's daily schedule or daily planner. So we've seen a lot of users, they'll post the 2 or 3 important things that are happening during that day. And now the loved one with dementia can kind of follow along, all with the goal of being super simple, super low burden. I think one of the things we did is we started to kind of think through this idea was, when we talked to a lot of caregivers, individuals with memory loss, people in the healthcare space, whether that's assisted living, independent living, at-home care companies. And then we also looked at the existing tools. And I think one of the big takeaways we had is the tech burden that we kind of place on our loved ones is super, super high. And we wanted to kind of develop something that is super low burden, super simple for the loved one. All they need to do is look at the board. They don't need to touch it. They don't need to manage it. All that is done by the family members through the mobile app. And we've seen a lot of people really like that aspect of it.
Yeah, no, I love all that personal background as well. And I'd love to hear more on, because I know you said it's kind of a tool to help bridge connections. It's definitely not meant to replace anything, which I think is a hesitation for a lot of people when introducing new technology, especially in this kind of way. And a lot of people want to talk and technology today's maybe ruined relationships. So could you share a little bit? I'd love to hear, you said you shared photos of your daughter. I'm sure that's kind of created a common point for you to talk to her more often and to have something call, right? I'm assuming that would kind of help build a relationship in that sense.
Yeah, exactly right. And one of the things that we did, so I'll send her a lot of messages about kind of what's going on with
Mm,
with our schedule and kind of and her own schedule as well. But then with the
right.
photos as well, we can add tags and additional context. So, I can
Mm,
kind of give her the context of, hey, this is your great granddaughter. Here's kind of what we're
right.
doing today. Here's kind of the new thing that she learned. So she kind of has that
Yeah.
additional context. We've also found that it's a great prompting mechanism
Mm,
for the care staff as well at her memory care
right.
facility, because now they're also more involved in kind of
I
that
see.
person's day to day and kind of what's happening in that person's family, where they'll walk in and they'll say, oh, look, like, your son sent you this message or your grandson sent you this
Mm,
message. Isn't this really nice? Here's kind of what's going on in your family's orbit. So it's been a really
right.
nice kind of prompting mechanism as well for the care staff. And I would say, to your point, like one of the things that I've seen, which really was quite amazing, was, so I've been using memory board with my grandmother now for a couple of months, towards since the
Hmm.
end of last year. And
Yeah.
out of the blue, my parents were out to lunch with her one day, and she started to ask about my daughter and ask about
Mm,
kind of what's going on with her great granddaughter,
mm,
by name, bringing up her by name, and kind of, mentioning
yeah.
her, which is something she just would not have been able to do previously
Right.
without kind of the ongoing prompting and kind of reminders and kind of
Mm,
notifications, that she kind of understood kind of who it was, and was able to kind of bring
mm,
her up again at another point when she wasn't around the memory board.
right.
So we've kind of seen similar experiences of people using the memory board, recollecting things that they
Mm,
otherwise, their caregiver didn't realize that they could, or just being able to attend more events because they knew what
right.
events were going on throughout the day. So we've seen a lot of kind of experiences like that have been really, really magical.
Yeah, no, I love that point because I think, in our world, it's very common that you let people follow along with your life through social media, that you're going to post. All of your friends are going to see your family picture that you just shared.
Yeah.
But if you're not on technology, you don't get that insight. So I think that's really cool to hear that you've been able to include her in your world, right? And bring her in and on a way that's accessible and easy for her to get involved and meets her at her level. Because that's the main thing I've been hearing from a lot of people that are experts in dementia care or any other kind of memory loss related thing, is that you really have to go into their world, right? You can't
Yeah.
just expect them to acclimate and become a part of your world
Yeah.
as they're going through all these changes. It's easier for you to meet them where they're at.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think there's kind of two things there that I kind of think a lot about. It's like, one
Hmm.
is, your is just that kind of point of staying connected. I mean, ultimately,
Right.
memory board is about staying connected. And
Hmm.
I think one of the things that I really struggled with, and I think a lot of families kind of struggle with, is this that loss of interaction and loss of
Right.
engagement that you have with loved ones as they get older. Maybe they're put into different living situations.
Hmm.
People live wide distances away from each other.
Right.
And just as the years go by, those interactions become less and less. You hear a lot of stories about people with dementia not being kind of comfortable, either not being
Mm,
able or being comfortable to kind of answer the phone. So these things kind of
right.
happen where each year you're talking to somebody less. And, that was just a really tough kind of feeling and kind of experience for
Yeah.
me. And I want to develop memory board to bridge that gap a little bit. And then
Yeah.
the other kind of side of that is just developing something that is super, super simple and low
Hmm.
burden and kind of easy to
Yeah.
use, where you're not asking somebody with dementia to manage a tablet or manage a device. I think a lot of us tried the Facebook portal back in the day when that was
Right.
available, and I think the moment you're kind of asking somebody to like interact or manage a device like that, you're kind of already
Hmm.
asking a little bit kind of too much. So
Hmm.
to the point of kind of meeting somebody where they are, I think simplicity is super critical in these
Yeah.
types of devices.
Yeah. And I know you shared a little bit about this, but could you kind of go into a little bit more depth about kind of how you specifically designed it to be simple and kind of how you kept that in mind with the features that you put into it or that you're planning to put into it? Because I know you said you're kind of still developing
Yeah,
more
yeah,
things.
absolutely. I think it was, simplicity and kind of ease of use is kind of like one of the core benefits from the get go. So, I'll give you kind of a more specific example. I think when we kind of looked at some of the existing technology that is out there for older adults,
Hmm.
I think it is it's basically kind of taking kind of mainstream consumer products and then kind of
Right.
tailoring it for more like older adults. For example,
Mm-hmm.
things like tablets or mobile phones, um, that are have big buttons that can
Mm-hmm.
do a wide range of things. But the kind of belief that I have is a lot of those tools are still create like a fairly high technology burden for people
Yeah.
who are dealing with memory loss, mild to advanced dementia
Mm-hmm.
or Alzheimer's. Even kind of the burden that you're placing on the loved ones who use those types of tools can be very, very high.
Right.
So for us, it was we want to do just one thing well, and that's the ability to kind of send messages, reminders, notifications, updates, and just kind of focus on that. So
Mm-hmm.
the kind of, and then building kind of features and functionalities designed for people with cognitive issues. So you're kind of alluding to that a little bit. I think what the way that we kind of think about it and kind of the plan for Memory Board going forward is to continue to add features and functionalities for people with dementia in mind. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
things like audio kind of functionality. So the ability to kind
Mm-hmm.
of read out the message, and in case somebody's not looking at the board in that moment in time.
Right.
Now, today, the board will play a sound when there's a new
Mm-hmm.
message. So there is kind of a prompt for somebody to know to look at the board when there's a new message. But there's just a whole range of things we can do for audio to be able to kind of play out the message and kind of just give another means for somebody to make sure that they received the message that was being sent. That's also going to be
Yeah.
really helpful for people who are low vision or poor vision.
Right.
That audio functionality is really, really key. I think the other kind of thing we think about is accessibility. So things like today, the messages are kind of designed to be large font. The boards themselves, we have kind of two sizes. We have a 10-inch diagonal board and a 15-inch diagonal board. So we have kind of a
Mm-hmm.
larger board for people who maybe have less, lower vision. But then
Right.
having accessibility around kind of color contrast and kind of color theory. I've had a lot of conversations with experts around kind of dementia color theory, and kind
Mm.
of thinking about high contrast specifically for dementia, memory loss, Alzheimer's. So there's a lot of kind of features that we're continuing to build out that we're really kind of thinking about for the caregivers and their loved
Yeah.
ones. What would be kind of most helpful for them?
Yeah. No, I love it. I think that's the key to it, right? Is that there's not many things built for them specifically in mind. So I think keeping all of those front of mind is definitely going to be helpful and going to make it a good product for a lot of people. And I'd love to hear. I think another thing that I commonly encounter in talking to different caregivers is how many different people are a part of their care system or ecosystem or whatever you want to call it. Whether that's multiple siblings, whether
Yeah.
it's, you brought up the nursing home and how they've kind of interacted with it. Could you talk a little bit about, is this meant to have multiple users being able to send messages? Like, are you the only one sending, messages to
Yeah.
grandma? Do you have other people kind of interacting with that too? What does that kind of look like for
Yeah,
people?
absolutely. And that was kind of a big part of, why we kind of started Memory Board as
Yeah.
well, where it's today people just kind of live, all over the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I think about my family. I have a brother in Seattle.
Mm.
I have extended family back in New York, my immediate family in Florida. And how can everybody kind of participate in the role of kind of caring for loved
Right.
ones and family members? So that was kind of really why we've developed, we call it the care circle, where Memory Board, you can have an unlimited number of members within your care
Mm.
circle who all have the ability to send messages to the Memory Board.
Mm.
That way everybody can kind of feel like they're involved and participating in the care of the loved
Right.
one. And the way that we're kind of seeing it is kind of see everything that people in your care circle have posted. Okay, in the case of the care circle, like I can go, let's say, there's a family function and we want to send a message to grandma to let her know that we're going to pick her up at 11 a.m. to take her to the family function. Well, I can go into the app and say, oh, my brother's already kind of posted that message to let her know. I don't need to kind of duplicate that message.
Mm.
And then we've also given you the ability to schedule the message. So let's say around 11:05, that message is really no longer relevant. That message can then disappear, so that when
Gotcha.
grandma's back in her space, she no longer kind of sees that message. There won't be kind of confusion caused
Mm.
by an outdated message.
Right. Yeah. No, because that would definitely cause a lot of confusion to keep seeing that, being like, wait, I thought I went to this already. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
So I think
exactly.
even that timing fixture is really important too. And I know you mentioned as well that you're kind of even seeing it being used for some other individuals, or you've had interest from other kind of people as well. I think it was a mother with an autistic son that had reached out to you and was using it. Can you kind of speak to, other areas that you can see this being used for as well, and where you would kind of hope to apply it in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's a whole deeper kind of conversation here around dementia and the diagnosis of dementia and Alzheimer's and
Right.
the difficulty around that and the staggering number of people who are kind of diagnosed. But I think the one when we kind of started out, we've used this kind of blanket term, kind of memory loss, and kind of
Hmm.
I've since kind of expanded that a little bit into kind of cognitive issues as well. But when you think
Right.
about kind of memory loss, I think that applies to a lot of people who are not just diagnosed dementia. I think in the case of my wife's grandmother,
Hmm.
she's 95 as well,
Hmm.
not diagnosed with dementia, but I think as your average 95-year-old, I think her memory is certainly not as good as it was
Right.
in her middle years. And as a result, she's seeing a lot of benefit from the memory board as well. I think we see a lot of cases where your loved one just misplaces, if they're still able to use a phone, they might misplace it, right? So you're sending them multiple texts throughout the day, you're asking them to give you a call, they're not able to give you a call. And the memory board is kind of another kind of way to reach them, to say, hey, I've been trying to reach you, give me a call when you can, when you see this. And it's kind of been a way to get a hold of them when, they might not be able to access their phone, which I think is an experience a lot of them relate to. But even kind of beyond that, to your point, we've had people reach out about other conditions and other kind of use cases. So as you mentioned, there's a woman in Minnesota who has an autistic son who's in high school, and they found that memory board has been a really helpful tool, where previously the son kind of used to call up his mom 5-10 times a day, trying to check in, understand kind of what's going on, what's kind of happening throughout the day, not sure, where his mom was. And now the memory board is kind of being a tool to kind of help one kind of relax him, kind of give everyone a little bit of peace of mind, to say, okay, I kind of know what's going on, I kind of know what my schedule is and kind of what the agenda looks like. It's reducing kind of those phone calls, but also providing everybody a little bit of kind of comfort to be able to more directly manage their kind of day to day.
Yeah, no, I love all of that because I think it takes me back to when I was even just speaking to adaptive technology in general, right? That's what I would call it. I don't know if you have a better
Yeah,
terminology
no,
for it,
yeah,
but just adaptive technology. Because it takes me back to when there was a woman I was helping who was blind, and I think I might have mentioned some of this as well, but it was shocking to me to realize that she couldn't even she primarily relied on a microwave and microwaving her meals because cooking became difficult for her. She was blind later in life.
yeah,
And so even just using a microwave became difficult for her if it didn't have raised buttons on it.
yeah,
And so because she obviously relied on tactile means to know
yeah,
what she was doing. And so we had to go and get puffy paint to put a dot on the start button and the like
mm,
30-second button so she would know have a reference point for
yeah,
what she was working with. And I've even seen that with some of the elderly people that I've worked with as well, that using a TV remote is too complicated. So if I can
yeah,
put a little green sticker on, this is the one button you click to turn it on, and that's all they need to do is turn it on,
yeah, yeah,
that's all it is. So I think that, again, simplifying things, having more people having conversations about, here's what people need, because technology is moving forward at such a rapid pace now
yeah,
with new things being launched, that I think we're forgetting that it's the more simple things, that it's, people that are still not being serviced by the majority. That's still a lot of people that are being
yeah,
left out of these groups that still need people to notice their needs and to, create technology that's going to meet them where they're at. Because a lot of these caregivers I talk to don't even know, things that people are building and technologies that are coming out to be able to help address a lot of these issues that they're having as well.
yeah, yeah. And I think fundamentally, kind of developing technology for older adults, it's just so
Hmm.
overlooked, and it's just not an
Yeah.
area that people seem to want to spend a lot of kind of time and kind of money and dollars. I think there's kind of a lot of different reasons for that.
Yeah.
But I think it's just kind of, when you're kind of doing it, it just kind of comes back to simplicity, kind of ease of use, keeping the burden super low, and kind of meeting people kind of where
Right.
they are. But yeah, I just, as I've kind of spent time in this space, kind of looked at the tools, there just seems to be, there's a lot that we could be doing that we're just not doing today.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally get it. And definitely have to start somewhere, right? And then kind of see where things go. And I know you mentioned to me as well that you've been testing it and trying to see if this would work for a care home setting. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what you've seen there and how that's impacted that world of things and where you kind of see it being useful?
Yeah, absolutely. So we completed a pilot over the first couple months of 2025, and
Hmm.
as part of that pilot, there were about 50 different kind of families involved. So that's a mix of
Okay.
individual families. It's an assisted living group where we offered it to some of their residents, and it was primarily the families of the residents
Hmm.
kind of using it with their loved ones. And then we did the same with an at home kind of care service. So
Gotcha.
they brought Memory Board to a number of their clients and kind of offered it. In that case, it was some of the care coordinators were also kind of
Mm.
involved in using Memory Board, along
Yeah.
with the family members of the clients involved as well. So we got a really kind of nice cross section of different ways that Memory Board can be used in a number of different kind of settings. And I would say
Hmm.
ultimately, the results of the pilot were, really, really positive. I mean, over 90% kind of reported that they saw an increase in engagement and kind of responsiveness from their loved ones kind of using the
Hmm.
tool. We got some really kind of great feedback around those kind of core two kind of use cases of one, staying connected, that idea of being able to reach your loved one when you
Right.
couldn't reach them before, and the second of kind of helping somebody manage their day to day, that idea of kind of attending more events and kind of knowing what's going on kind of throughout the day because of Memory Board. But I think ultimately with the goal of providing kind of peace of mind, for everybody involved, and providing kind of a little bit of kind of comfort. Again, Memory Board is a tool. It's not an end all be all, but I think anything
Right.
that we can do to kind of help people reduce their anxiety and kind of feel a little
Hmm.
bit more connected, I think is a super worthwhile endeavor. Specific to kind of the assisted living and kind of the at home kind of care setting, I think we see a lot of kind of value and kind of benefit there. I think about the assisted living kind of context where, imagine you have boards in kind of different residence rooms,
Hmm.
and there's a staff person at the front of the who can send either the same message to all the boards. Maybe there's an
Right.
activity down in the lobby. Maybe it's a reminder about an event that's happening,
Mm.
something that the residents kind of need to kind of keep in mind or do, or something about lunch or kind of dinner and kind of what's going on. But then you could also send individual messages to certain residents. Hey, a family member's here to visit you. Hey, you kind of have this appointment. Somebody will be coming by to kind of take you to
Mm.
appointment at this time.
Yeah.
So there can be a kind of a central hub for the assisted living to kind of manage all the memory boards that they have within the facility.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think things like this are going to be more needed given that we're still in a shortage of employees in every kind of care setting, whether it's in-home care or in facilities. Like I think I read in the state of South Carolina, there was something like between 13 to 16,000 workers. Like we have a shortage
Yeah,
of people because multiple different issues that we're not gonna
yeah,
go into in this discussion, but
yeah,
they're seeing that reflected over in nursing homes as well of every sort. So I think things like that would definitely be helpful because again, you've only got that one activity director leading
yeah,
all the activities. It's hard for her to run around and she can't also be a CNA and wheel
yeah,
everyone back and forth, from activities and rooms. And so I think being able to have that reminder, having some kind of technology to assist in that, I think that'll definitely be key. As we continue to see, unfortunately, the shortage of
yeah,
workers tied with, the wave of people that we have that are going to need these kind of support in this service. So just to kind of like tie back our conversation into, more of the meaningful and the impactful side of these things. I guess kind of looking back at your experience, now that you've, been in these nursing homes, you have personal experience. What is something that you kind of learned about, navigating caring for people with memory loss? Because I feel like it's something that a lot of people don't necessarily understand or know the impact that it has on somebody's world. So if there's something you wish you could kind of communicate to more people about how to interact with anyone that's dealing with memory loss, what would that kind of be?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say, I mean, kind of two things. One is, I think just ultimately, like, going back to this kind of thing we've talked about a couple of times now, is kind of meeting them kind of where
Right.
they are, and kind of having a
Yeah.
having a conversation kind of with them to kind of understand, how they're feeling, how they're doing, what their kind of needs are, what they're kind of looking for. I
Hmm.
think we see this in a lot of different ways, and we've kind of hit on this theme a couple of times. But
Right.
Not only are we as caregivers losing touch with the person who's our family member, well, think about it from their perspective as well. It's in some ways worse because they're feeling even less connected because
Right.
their kind of network is kind of shrinking even more than our own network. So as much as like kind of we feel that burden, the burden is even more significant on
Mm.
the folks that we're kind of thinking about and the older adults that we're trying to support. So I think about it from kind of that perspective of, hey, how can I make sure that I'm engaging, with this person, even though it might not be the same conversation I had with them 5, 10 years ago, to continue to
Mm.
kind of maintain that kind of relationship or make sure that like I'm having kind of a dialogue. And then I think the other thing that we've seen, especially with kind of memory board, is I think things kind of slow
Mhm.
and kind of introducing things kind of slowly over time, or kind of bringing up topics kind of slowly over time. So
Yeah.
specific to the case of memory board, I think we saw this in a lot of cases and situations where, like any new technology, like anything in general, like any behavior change, it just takes
Mhm.
time, and things are kind of developed over days and weeks and months, and
Right.
not after doing something for the first time or the second time. So I think just introducing something slowly, I think just is the best way to make sure that somebody gets comfortable with it and somebody can
Yeah.
just kind of ease into something. And that's what we tell a lot of people with memory board is like, don't invite your whole family to your care circle
Yeah.
on day one. Don't
That'd be
send
way too much.
5 messages on day one.
Yeah.
Just start slowly over time,
Mm.
and help kind of ease that person into using it. And naturally, like there's a lot of tech hesitancy on
Right.
on their side as well, not only for us in terms of learning a new tool, learning a new device. But I think that's where there's a
Right.
little bit of education that needs to come in. Maybe not just education, but just kind of like reassurance that this is nothing you need to kind of do on your end. Like you just need to kind of look
Right.
at it. It's going to be next to your TV. Messages will appear. You don't need to touch it. It'll go to sleep on its own at night. It'll wake up in the morning.
Right.
And, just kind of reassuring somebody kind of over time that, hey, this is going to be really helpful for you. This is going to be a helpful tool for us to kind of stay connected.
Right. And I think that's something kind of what I hear and what you're saying at the end as well is, that you make it clear that it's a team effort and it's not something that they're dealing with on their own. Like I think that's the main thing, right? Like we're going to work on you learning this together. This is going to help you stay connected to me. Like if you have questions or concerns, please ask me. Like making sure that it's a safe place, right, for them to
Yeah.
learn as
Yeah.
well, I think is a big thing because it is very overwhelming. And so being able to have somebody there to walk them through it, and having that patience and showing that you're going to be patient with them and
Yeah.
reassuring, that's
Yeah.
the biggest thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, we've seen, I had kind of one particular case where somebody kind of felt like they were going to, it was a device they were going to fail at, right? It was kind of
Mm,
something that they weren't going to be able to kind of figure out. And,
yeah.
and that kind of gave them some concern, right, about it. But I think kind of taking this kind of slow approach over time,
Right.
maybe starting with some tagged photos, something that is a little bit more familiar of a concept to people before
That
then kind
makes
of going
sense.
into the messaging. I think there's just kind of a natural way to introduce
Mm,
something like this slowly over time.
yeah. No, that definitely makes sense. And I guess one other kind of question for you as well that's more personal, but like if you can think back as well on your experience with your grandmother and how you're now feeling more connected to her, what's some advice you would give somebody in any kind of care situation if they feel really disconnected from their loved one and they're trying to find a way to just build that relationship again?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, one of the things that I kind of think back to is, so I've lived in San Francisco now for quite some time.
Hmm.
Previously, had spent my life on the East Coast, and growing up, I was very close to both my sets of grandparents, and we would get to see each other pretty much weekly, just because we were driving distance away.
Hmm.
Naturally over time we had moved away, so I moved down to Florida, and I was kind of in going through school, and I think naturally, like even from a young age, I started to kind of feel that disconnect happening, where it just became
Right.
kind of harder and harder to kind of keep in touch. So I would say just kind of finding different ways to kind of keep in touch with kind of your family members, whether it's,
Hmm.
I mean, back in the day it was kind of sending physical cards in the mail, but
Right.
now we're fortunate to have kind of other technology that kind of assist with that. And it's not even about having a conversation. I think it's also kind of things like check-ins and reminders and kind of
Right.
messages. So if you have kind of loved ones who are still able to kind of use a phone, I think just kind of sending photos and updates and kind of letting that person know that you're kind of
Right.
thinking about them, I think really, really goes a long way. Because I think one of the things we're seeing with some of the folks that we've been working with is like, if you're kind of dealing with dementia, some people they're kind of naturally hesitant to get on the phone,
Mm-hmm.
because they feel like, they don't want you to ask them a question that they're not going to know the answer to, and then that's
Mm,
going to kind of give them some anxiety. So it's not just about kind of getting on the phone and having a conversation. I think even just providing kind of one-way check-ins and one-way kind of
right.
communications can also be really helpful for somebody.
Right. And I think it's interesting to see that on the flip side, because I know a lot of people will say like they feel overwhelmed and they don't even know what to ask because they're worried they're going to ask something they don't know how to answer to, right?
Yeah,
So I think kind of learning over time, what can you ask? What can
yeah,
you know, even if it's just asking how their day went, I'm sure that would mean the world to somebody. Or, there's a gentleman that I've visited sometimes that will always tell me about his career, and it's practically the same conversation every time. But I can
yeah,
tell that he likes telling the story and he likes, interacting with somebody and having someone listen. And so I think it's just focusing on the positive points and the things that you can share in common, right?
yeah,
That connection. And then
yeah,
if there's an awkward moment, there's an awkward moment. It's fine. Like
yeah, exactly, exactly.
that's everyday life with people that don't even have memory issues too, right? So
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. And I think, a lot of just kind of, I think the same as like reminiscing about kind of moments and kind of points in times.
right,
Like, it's not, you don't need to be asking a question. You could also kind of just be bringing up, kind of something in the past that
right,
has really kind of stuck with you, or, just a story you
right.
can kind of recollect. I think that's really impactful as well.
Yeah, no, of course, I love that. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing all of this because I think it's been very helpful. I love hearing about what you're building because I think it's really going to help a lot of people, and I'm excited that you've gotten good feedback and are continuing to listen to people too and hear what they need and work on building that. So it would kind of be the best way for people to stay in touch with you and to, potentially buy this if this is something that's going to be useful for them.
Yeah, you can learn more at our website, memoryboard.com. You can sign up to join our newsletter there. We're on social as well, on Facebook and on Instagram at Memory Board app. And yeah, just please reach out. I'm super available, and emails kind of go straight to me at this point. So happy to kind of answer your questions directly. Let me know how I can be helpful. Thank you so much for letting me be in this and participate, and kind of share the memory board story.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of it. So definitely go and check out that website, and I'm sure I'll link it as well in the show notes. And happy to tag them as well, so you guys can definitely find that and just follow along with all of it too. Because like I said, I think it'll really be helpful for a lot of people. Hey friend, before you go, I just want to remind you of something. Even if things look different than they used to, or if conversations feel harder, or connection doesn't come as easily, your presence still matters more than you think. Sometimes it's not about saying the perfect thing or fixing anything, it's just about showing up consistently in whatever way you can and meeting them where they are. And if today's episode reminded you of someone, maybe send it to them or start a conversation. Maybe just take one small step towards connection, because that is the only cure for loneliness when we feel alone and are hurting. You don't have to have all the answers, but you just have to keep showing up. If this episode meant something to you, it would mean the world if you shared it, left a review, or sent it to someone who might need it too. And if you want more support, more real conversations, and tools like this, you can find everything linked in the show notes. I'm so glad you're here, and we'll talk the next episode.